In the world of business, emotions don't matter, numbers do. Lives get replaced, stories get rewritten, and tragedies get called just accidents. When profits rise, compassion falls. And somewhere in that trade for money, a human life loses its value. At Loro Parque, a young trainer named Alexis Martínez gave everything: his time, his passion, his trust. But the place that should have protected him cared more about its image than his life. And then there was an orca, the killer whale he thought he knew. Powerful, instinctive, indifferent to human rules. Because in the end, both sides, man and beast, showed no mercy. One driven by instinct, the other by money. And when those two forces collided, the water turned red. For Alexis Martínez, working with killer whales wasn't just a job. It was a dream shaped by saltwater and sunlight. He was 29, young, ambitious, and one of the few trusted to perform with killer whales at Loro Parque in Tenerife, Spain. Every morning he walked past the glass walls of Orca Ocean, where gentle waves lapped and the haunting calls of killer whales echoed through the air. During shows, children cheered his name, amazed by his dives, his calm precision, his quiet, steady confidence. But working with killer whales always came with risk, and deep down Alexis knew it. Still, he trusted them, especially one. Among all the whales, one stood apart: Keto. Alexis and Keto shared a rare bond, built on routine, respect, and years of silent trust. But that trust would soon cost him everything. Before the tragedy, before the panic and the headlines, there was Keto. Born in a tank at SeaWorld Orlando in 1995, he never knew the real ocean, never felt the deep, endless blue. His world was tanks, trainers, and whistles. From birth, he wasn't raised for the wild, he was raised for shows. He was moved from tank to tank, San Diego, then Texas, each move taking him further from what little he knew. And in 2006, SeaWorld sent him across the world to Loro Parque in Spain. Loro Parque's new facility, Orca Ocean, was bright and gleaming, but empty. So SeaWorld sent 4 whales: Keto, Tico, Koana, and Skyla. All young, all born in tanks, all taken from their families. They were strangers forced to live together, a family only because they were trapped. At first, things seemed perfect. Keto was strong, obedient, the star everyone admired. But behind the glass, things were different. The orcas fought. They bit each other. They bled. Their world looked calm from the outside, but inside, it was chaos. Trainers started to notice small signs: refusals, defiance, moments of aggression. Something inside Keto was starting to break. Keto, the biggest male, often pushed limits. Yet he was trusted. He was the favorite. And on Christmas Eve 2009, that trust would turn deadly. It started with small signs, tiny moments only trainers would notice. Keto ignored a hand signal, then another. In a sudden, violent motion, he lunged. He grabbed Alexis and dragged him under, without warning, without hesitation. The water exploded in white foam and bubbles. Emergency whistles shrieked. Trainers screamed his name, their voices breaking through panic. But Keto didn't let go. The massive orca thrashed beneath the surface, raw power churning the water. When he finally rose again, he was still holding Alexis, motionless in his jaws. The pool turned red. The world stood still around the blood-stained pool. The orca he loved had just taken his life. Paramedics arrived within minutes. But it was too late. The pool was still. The water had gone silent. Alexis had suffered broken ribs, crushed organs, and finally he drowned. His body was pulled from the same water he had trusted every day. The first report called it a tragic accident. But those who stood by the pool knew the truth felt heavier. Something deeper had gone wrong. Keto's warning signs weren't new. There had been moments before. Flashes of defiance, ignored cues, near misses no one wanted to talk about. They were written down, yes, but buried. Still, the shows went on. The crowds kept cheering, and the warnings stayed hidden. When the tragedy struck, management moved fast. They sealed the area, silenced the staff, and told trainers to say nothing. By the time the story reached the media, It had already been rewritten. Keto was never really Loro Parque's whale. Like every other orca there, belonged to SeaWorld. The marine park giant controlled everything: training, behavior, even birth itself. Which means SeaWorld knew, long before that day, exactly what Keto was capable of. And then, just 2 months later, tragedy struck again. Another SeaWorld orca, Tilikum, killed his trainer, Don Brancho, in Orlando. 2 deaths. 2 parks. One name behind them both. Were these just tragic coincidences? Or the cost of years of corporate negligence? In the days after Alexis's death, Loro Parque and SeaWorld moved fast. Not to grieve, not to take responsibility, but to control the story. Publicly, they called it an unpredictable tragedy. Privately, they blamed Alexis, claiming he made a fatal mistake, even though those who were there said otherwise. No press conference. No acknowledgement of Keto's past. No mention of the Orcas' violent history. The biting, the ramming, the fighting. SeaWorld sent their own experts to Spain, quietly, without cameras or questions. They gathered records, restricted interviews, and buried the story before it ever reached the public. For months, the shows went on. Crouchered, music played. No memorials. No policy changes. Alexis's death became a secret too painful to speak of. Years later, after the release of Blackfish, the truth began to surface, piece by piece. SeaWorld and Loro Parque both knew their orcas were stressed, aggressive, broken. But they chose silence over safety. And in the end, that silence cost 2 trainers their lives. Those who knew Alexis say he wasn't reckless, just a man who trusted too deeply. He was kind, careful, completely devoted to the animals he called family. But love and loyalty were no match for corporate control and the wild instincts of a predator. After that day, Keto's world stayed the same. The same pool, the same routines, the same walls of glass. Trainers never entered the water again. The shows went on, but from a distance. Loro Parque continued to call Keto a beloved animal, an ambassador for his species. Years passed. 15 of them. Keto grew older, heavier, and quieter. Reports spoke of worn teeth from gnawing on hard surfaces, scars from clashes with other orcas, and long hours floating motionless, a shadow of the powerful giant he once was. In 2018, SeaWorld officially gave up ownership of Keto and the others. From then on, they belonged entirely to Loro Parque. And then, in November 2024, after days of illness, Keto's life quietly ended. He was 29 years old, a lifetime spent behind glass, never once touching the open sea. The park said he died surrounded by people who loved him. But for many, his death marked something deeper. The end of an era built on spectacle, and the price paid by both man and beast. For those who remember December 24, 2009, Keto will always be more than just an orca. He's a reminder that nature's most majestic creatures are never meant to live in captivity. And Alexis Martínez's story lives on. Not just as a tragedy, but as a warning the world must never forget. He never saw it coming. One moment, it was trust. The next, it was tragedy. In memory of Alexis Martínez, a man who gave his life doing what he loved. A reminder that nature's beauty comes with power no human should ever underestimate. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and join me as we uncover more real-life encounters where human passion meets nature's fury. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. Because sometimes, even love can't tame the ocean.